Planning, the 18 fallacies. Fallacy: you can know what's ahead. The 3 cornerstones of planning: predicting the future, seeing what you want your future to look like, and devising ways to make sure your future comes out that way, are shaky from the start. Start with predicting the future. Don't. People can't. For example, every significant business commentator in the 1950s insisted that the baby boom would create enormous unemployment when the boomers started entering the workforce in the 1960s. These experts goofed not once, but twice. These experts failed to predict that women would flood the labor force. By the experts' reckoning, this flood should have created even more massive unemployment. Yet from 1965 to 1985, the labor force grew 40%, while the number of jobs grew 50%. That's more jobs, in both percentage and absolute numbers, than at any other time in America's peacetime history. To see another bad prediction, look around your office. Dozens of experts predicted that huge numbers of your employees would be working from home. Surprise, everyone's at work. The number of working from home employees is less than 30% of what most people predicted. These experts failed to recognize that work performs a social function. Most people want to be at an office. Weren't VCRs going to kill the movies? Movie attendance has surged since VCRs were introduced. It seems that only bad movies will kill the movies, and they're trying. Wasn't television supposed to kill books? Well, books and mega bookstores are proliferating. The reading group has become a social phenomenon. In fact, television probably has helped increase book sales. Would Norman Schwarzkopf's book have sold as many copies if the Gulf War had been covered only on radio? And does any technique sell more books than having the author appear on TV talk shows? Speaking of bookstores, to appreciate why the future can't be predicted, go to your local bookstore. Go to the math section. Look at the top 2 rows. Chances are that those books discuss today's hot topic in mathematics, fractals. Fractals spring from chaos theory, which suggests the unpredictability and randomness of everything, even relationships among numbers. If even numbers are unpredictable, and if you cannot predict something as physically based and data-rich as weather, where chaos theory first was postulated, then you certainly cannot predict people's attitudes. Even if you can identify or predict people's attitudes, it's not that helpful, because behaviors don't always follow attitudes. Take smoking. Given the almost universal awareness of smoking's risks since the first Surgeon General's report, the virtual disappearance of stars smoking on television and in movies, and all the public condemnation and ridicule, smoking should be way down. It's not. Take our eating habits. Health consciousness and the growing fear of cholesterol should have made the American steakhouse extinct. But 6 steakhouses have opened in Minneapolis in the last 4 years, while not one has closed. Sane, smart people, almost all planners are both, would have predicted just the opposite of these behaviors. Again, even if you can identify people's attitudes, you cannot predict the behavior that will follow. So it seems that our efforts to plan are at the mercy of something that Einstein warned of, years ago: the universe is not only queerer than we suppose. It's queerer than we can suppose. You never know. So don't assume that you should. Plan for several possible futures. Fallacy: you can know what you want. The second premise of planning, that you can know what you want in the future, is slightly dubious, too. George Bernard Shaw hit it squarely when he wrote, "There are 2 tragedies in life. One is not to get your heart's desire. The other is to get it." Like almost everyone, I've always known what I wanted. Since 1962, it has been to be the next Arnold Palmer, the next editor of Sports Illustrated, the next F. Lee Bailey, the next David Ogilvy, and the next coach of the Minneapolis Cub 12 champions. Businesses work the same way. They don't like what they once wanted, so they change their minds. Most want to get bigger, then realize that bigger often means less profitable. A few companies yearn to be the very best, then realize the market doesn't appreciate the quality and won't pay for it. Some companies want to attack a niche, then learn that their competitors had good reasons for avoiding that niche all those years. The very premises on which planning is based seem flawed from the beginning. Does this mean that you shouldn't plan? Not at all. It does mean that everyone involved in planning should start with 3 ideas. First, accept the limitations of planning. Don't assume that putting 8 smart people in a room with good data will automatically produce something. Ford put 8 smart planners in the room, and out popped the Edsel. Second, don't value planning for its result, the plan. The greatest value of the plan is the process, the thinking that went into it. Third, don't plan your future. Plan your people. Outstanding people who fit your basic broad vision will tend to make the right decisions along the way, not by following a plan, but by using their skill. Fallacy: strategy is king. Business once encouraged the view of strategy's superiority to tactics by throwing piles of money at it. 15 years ago, many with a Wharton MBA and a lust for money and status tried to get into strategic planning. They're still great jobs if you can get them. But after Business Week in 1984 reviewed the history of 33 major strategic plans, and found that 19 had failed, the exalted status of strategic planners was in trouble. Many business textbooks reinforce this bias about strategy's superiority. No surprise. Professors write textbooks, and most professors think that working on strategy sounds like a more dignified use of one's gifts than toiling on tactics. But in successful companies, tactics drive strategy as much or more than strategy drives tactics. These companies do something and learn from it. It changes their thinking. As Tom Cooper, the former COO of Access Management, has observed, sometimes, the very first tactic you execute changes your entire plan. For a vivid example of tactics shaping strategy, consider the Apple Macintosh computer. The Macintosh was not the first iteration of the Macintosh product, the Lisa was. Lisa bombed. But Lisa showed Apple what the market really needed. Guy Kawasaki, Macintosh's product manager, has admitted that Macintosh evolved from an explicit strategy: ready, fire, aim. Or, as Kawasaki expresses it, lead, take a shot, listen, respond, lead again. Tactics don't complete a process, they continue to shape one. Tactics sometimes are the end, the beginning, and the middle. Most important, tactics play a critical role, often the critical role, in information gathering. By contrast, you can't learn from your strategy. It's just sitting there pretending it knows what it's talking about, while your tactics are out there getting battle tested by the market. I once advised a consultant who was vacillating among several reasonable marketing tactics. I had a button printed with 2 words of advice for him: do anything. Fallacy: build a better mousetrap. We still believe that if you build a better mousetrap, the world will start lining up on your porch. But too many examples today, computers and watches, to name 2, suggest otherwise. The computer industry has been packed with great ideas that were sitting in back rooms until someone dragged them out the door and pushed them with a passion. Xerox invented the mouse, icons, and Windows. The ideas were great, but they were only ideas. Only Apple's passionate belief in those ideas put them into play, into the Macintosh computer, and changed the world. This theme also played out with watches in the 1970s. The Swiss actually invented the quartz-powered digital watch, but held off introducing it. Then Hattori of Japan took the digital technology and started smashing the Swiss over the head with it, almost eliminating them from the watch market, with which Swiss had been synonymous for decades. Consider the converse: if you execute your idea without passion, others will think you lack confidence in the idea, and they will lose confidence, too. Execute passionately. Marginal tactics executed passionately almost always will outperform brilliant tactics executed marginally. Fallacy: there'll be a perfect time, the bedrock fallacy. The 2 typical planning effort can be illustrated by the fable of Bedrock Wheel Company. Some Neanderthals were working on developing a wheel. Design toiled on different concepts, oblongs, rounded rectangles, and so forth, while planning was considering some market applications. Design finally created a prototype, a perfect circle. Sales and marketing gushed. They knew they had a unique product with a huge market. But Bedrock's planners shouted, "Wait! Not so fast. We're not ready." When pressed, The lead planner offered his visionary and ultimately disastrous reasons. Look, you can see the trends. Men are tired of chasing woolly mammoths for food. So men will want to ride on these wheels. And men love speed. Look, for example, at the way they have sex. So they'll want to go faster and faster on these wheels. That means you'll need wheels with traction. A smooth wheel won't work. Naturally, an impatient fellow bedrock executive finally asked, "So what do you recommend?" "Simple," the prophetic planner announced. "Delay the launch. We need to wait until man invents vulcanized rubber." Preposterous. No, business. Years ago, a Bloomington-based company created some astonishingly good multimedia software. This company wasn't just positioned to ride the multimedia wave, it was the wave. But the founders wanted an insanely great product. Did the world want that? No. The world wanted what the software company had right then. The world needed a plain old wheel and was ready to pay for it. The company's endless analysis and waiting ended up proving that he who hesitates is lost. Other companies caught up and passed this company before the company released version 1.0. Today's good idea almost always will beat tomorrow's better one. Do it now. The business obituary pages are filled with planners who waited. Fallacy: patience is a virtue, the shark rule. Most people believe that organizations work on the principle of inertia. Organizations tend to stay as they are, either at rest or in motion. But it appears that organizations actually are subject to the law that governs sharks. If a shark does not move, it cannot breathe. And it dies. Moving organizations tend to keep moving. Dormant ones tend to run out of air and die. To worsen this problem, not moving rarely causes any immediate pain to an organization. This encourages even more waiting. Hey, we waited to make sure we were right, and nothing bad happened, so that's good. Not moving begets more not moving. By the time the delayed consequences of all this not moving occur, one of which is that action-oriented people in the company flee the company, making the company even more waiting-oriented, it often is too late to correct them. Act like a shark. Keep moving. Fallacy: think smart, the crab concept. At Carmichael Lynch Advertising in the late 1980s, we conceived several awards for our group's creative people. My favorite was the crab plaque. This plaque, awarded for the stupidest idea, featured a wind-up plastic crab, because crabs move laterally, symbolizing the power of lateral thinking. Because lateral ideas do not follow in a straight line from the thinking that preceded them, they usually look stupid at first. But we needed more stupid thinking. We had too much smart thinking. Our average Stanford Binet exceeded 120, easy. We just needed to be stupider, and to be unafraid of coming up with seemingly stupid ideas, which often turn out the best. As we learned every day, highly intelligent people are the world's foremost experts at squashing good ideas. That's because intelligent people have one absolute favorite use for their formidable intelligence: telling other people, with total conviction and logic, why other people's ideas will not work. Planning tends to attract these people, but they are dangerous. As smart as they are, their memories fail them. They always forget that good ideas often sound ludicrous at first. Think dumb. The fallacy of science and data: nothing said in a business meeting can match the force of any statement preceded by the words "the research shows." That's because research connotes something scientific. But there are no rigorous sciences of human behavior. The social sciences consist, at best, of some well-supported general observations. Planning research is not research in the best scientific sense. It's insurance. The former research director of a large food company, in fact, confessed that he actually called his department the insurance department. Product managers would ask him for scientific support for their plans so they could go face top management after their product bombed and say, "Well, hey, the research said it would work." Many people still give special weight to any statement that is highly quantified, as if they believe that numbers have scientific weight. Most people prefer new Coke to old Coke. Sounds suspect to them. 5 out of 6 people sounds much better. But 83.3% of respondents sounds like convincing scientific data. Never mind that the last two statements, 5 out of 6 and 83.3% actually are identical. And never mind that all three statements turned out to be totally inaccurate and misleading, as executives at Coca-Cola learned to their public embarrassment. This aura of science has a remarkable ability to fool people. Consider Stanford Research Institute's introduction of the vowels, values, attitudes, and lifestyles concept to marketing planning in the mid-1980s. Vowels concluded that there are 7 types of people, a conclusion that many people initially bought. Did those people forget who they were? Like everyone else, these people had met thousands of people and from that, learned that each person is unique. These people had searched for friendships and found very few people with whom they shared even a few things in common. But when the vowels people came along, well-educated people linked to a great university, and said, there are 7 types of people, many bought it. Before long, commercials were touting coffee as the drink for the new achievers, the largest vowels segment during the Yuppie era, the comic highlight of the mercifully brief vowels boom. Today, even hard scientists confess that their sciences look softer every day. And the soft sciences have little claim to science at all, even when they offer broad generalizations backed by numbers. My friend John Tillman, a brilliant student of the hard sciences, once explained why he never studied one prominent social science. Sociology, John insisted, consists of systematic and fancy ways of describing what already is obvious. Mistrust facts. And don't approach planning as a precise science. Planning is an imprecise art. The fallacy of focus groups. Occasionally, 1 + 1 = more than 2. Bill Bernbach discovered that in the late 1950s, when he brought new imagination to advertising by bringing a new method to it. The method was the copywriter and art director team. Before Bernbach, most copywriters and art directors worked independently. The copywriter came up with an idea, a headline, and some copy for an ad, and slipped his notes under the art director's door. The art director dressed up the idea, made a layout, and voila! An ad. Bernbach believed in brainstorming, the process in which ideas ricochet between at least 2 people. He believed that if individuals can produce good ideas, teams can produce even better ones. Then Bernbach's teams at Doyle Dane Bernbach created the ads for Avis, Volkswagen, and Polaroid that proved Bernbach right. Given that groups are good at brainstorming, perhaps many services might benefit from focus groups that brainstorm new ideas. They might. But consider the major innovations in service marketing: automated teller machines, negotiable certificates of deposit, storefront tax services, legal clinics, predictive dialing systems, traveler's checks, overnight package delivery, automated airline reservations systems, junk bonds, frequent flyer and other loyalty marketing programs, credit cards, money market mutual funds, extended service contracts, home equity lines of credit, alternative dispute resolution services, drive-in and drive-up services, home delivery, database marketing, home shopping, and a dozen others. Did focus groups generate any of those ideas? Could a focus group have generated any of those ideas? Could a focus group inspire the personal computer, personal copier, cellular telephone, electronic digital assistant, fax machine, or anything like them? And while we are on this subject, consider 3 recent innovations: skinless Kentucky Fried Chicken, McLean, lower-calorie McDonald's hamburgers, and low-fat Pizza Hut pizzas. Focus groups loved these ideas. Real people, unfortunately, did not, and KFC, McDonald's, and Pizza Hut abandoned all 3 products. So maybe focus groups can brainstorm for you. But you should never bet on it. Beware of focus groups, they focus only on today. And planning is about tomorrow. The fallacy of memory. The gifted science writer Stephen Jay Gould once wrote a wonderful essay on how our memories deceive us. For years, Gould remembered the sunny afternoons of his youth, talking with his dad on the steps leading into the Forest Hills Tennis Center. Several of years ago, Gould was walking in his old neighborhood. Suddenly he saw those steps. They led up to the dilapidated door of Mueller Moving and Storage. We remember badly. We look back and see things that were not there. We cite as proof for something an event that simply did not occur as we remember it. In planning, beware of what you think you remember. The fallacy of experience. They say people learn from experience. Some do. But consider what one Minnesota company thought it learned from its advertising. In 1988, the company used some fairly obscure Minnesota celebrities as spokespersons in some unremarkable national television ads. The ads flopped. The marketing director, of course, confidently concluded that using celebrities in ads doesn't work. The people at Nike should speak with her. In the early 1980s, a Minnesota dairy ran an internationally acclaimed radio campaign featuring the dairy's foreman. One spring morning, a dairy executive received an angry letter. The elderly woman author was upset over a commercial in which Ord Paulson, the foreman, said that the dairy's price cow reminded him of his wife. Meeting with two agency people afterward, the executive read the letter, hurled it into his desk, and insisted that the agency kill the campaign. The letter confirmed, in the executive's exact words, that these spots use humor. And people do not like humor. When we infer things, we tend to overgeneralize. We want to establish cubbyholes and some general principles. And so we decide that celebrities never work in ads, that people do not like humor, and a dozen other examples of concluding too much from too little. What does what you experience really prove? Usually, far less than you thought. And what you thought you learned can make you abandon a strategy or tactic that was 90% right. Have a healthy distrust of what experience has taught you. The fallacy of confidence. You know several things about your business. Our customers buy on price. Telemarketing does not work with this audience. Our clients won't pay for higher quality, even if we could achieve it. You know things like these. Or do you? You hear similar sacred truths in every company. Often, these sacred truths start with someone, we'll call him Will, as a mere opinion. Will then starts seeing everything in light of his opinion. He leaps on any evidence that supports his opinion and ignores all contrary evidence. Before long, Will's opinion has become his conviction, which he conveys to other employees. Will's apostles, impressed by his reputation and conviction, spread Will's faith further. Soon, Will's mere opinion has become a company-wide dogma. But many of these so-called truths are false. Just like many of your truths about your service. This sobering fact, that you, Will, and I are wrong far more often than we know, has been suggested by dozens of studies that test people on subjects on which they consider themselves authorities. The people tested answer a series of questions, and then answer this question about each answer, from 1 to 100%, how certain are you about this answer? What happens? On the answers of which people say they are totally, 100%, certain, they are right only 85% of the time. In other words, 15% of the time you think you are absolutely certain you are absolutely wrong. In most services, that 15% error, those wrong but widespread assumptions that everyone in the company is making, is the most leverageable part of your business. Find it, and attack it. If you are prone to being certain, copy Jay Chiat. The head of Chiat Day, the ad agency behind many of America's most conspicuous advertisements, Chiat carries a note in his pocket. The note reminds him that whenever he is in an argument he should remember the note's 3 words, maybe he's right. Maybe others are right and you're wrong, even if you are certain you're right. These tests, which demonstrate the fallacy of confidence, the overconfidence bias, as it is called by psychologists, also tell you not to be overwhelmed by other people's total convictions. In fact, many businesses unwittingly follow the path of greatest conviction. They consistently do whatever the most convinced person argues they should do. So those question authority bumper stickers offer good advice. Even when you or someone else feels certain, you should question that authority. Especially your own. Beware of the overconfidence bias. Maybe he's right. Fallacy. Perfection is perfection. You easily can get stalled in the shift from strategy to tactics because you are paralyzed by your desire for excellence. Here's a good way to rank the best plans: very good, good, best, not good, truly god-awful, best. Rank slower than good? Why? Because getting to best usually gets complicated. First, can everyone ever agree on what is best? How long will it take to reach an agreement? How long will it take to achieve best? How much excellence in other areas, work environment, productivity, speed of delivery, will we sacrifice to achieve excellence in this one? And perhaps most important, will all that excellence really benefit the person for whom it is intended? Will the prospects or customers care? Will it be worth the cost to them? The planning process tends to attract perfectionists. But something paralyzes these people, their fear that executing the plan will show that the plan was not perfect. So rather than risk being found out, these people do nothing. They wait. Many outstanding big picture thinkers are always looking for, and burdened by, this search for perfection. But too often, the path to perfection leads to procrastination. Don't let perfect ruin good. Fallacy: failure is failure. Few phobias are more widespread than the fear of failure. But what is failure? Robert Townsend, who helped mastermind Davis's dramatic turnaround in the 1960s, said 2 of every 3 decisions he made were wrong. America's best pro basketball teams lose the basketball every 3 minutes without even getting up a shot. The legendary golfer Ben Hogan said that in 18 holes, he usually hit only 2 or 3 balls exactly as he had planned. Fred Smith got a C on the graduate business school paper in which he described the concept for Federal Express. The world champion in baseball has to win only 57% of its championship games. And no discussion of failure should avoid 3M. 3M went almost 2 years without a sale. Then in 1904 they tried sandpaper. 2 years later sandpaper sales were averaging $2,500 a month, on expenses of over $9,000 a month. William McKnight became the assistant bookkeeper in 1907, settled for stock instead of cash while the company bounced from blunder to blunder, and retired with over $500 million in 1978. There's little point in killing an idea by saying it might fail. Any idea might fail. If you're doing anything worthwhile at all, you'll suffer a dozen failures. Start failing so you can start succeeding. The fallacy of expertise. Before you look to expert insight for help in planning, ask yourself, what is an expert? The Wall Street Journal periodically matches the nation's leading stock analysts against a handful of darts. Over the past year, the randomly thrown darts consistently have hit better stocks on a dartboard than those chosen by the experts, after months of study and years of experience. What is an expert? Is an expert anything more than someone with lots of data and experience? But to what end? The data on most subjects will support totally opposite conclusions, a fact which explains the popularity of the McLaughlin-Grow and similar televised debates. The value of an expert's experience is dubious for another reason. Every experience in life is unique. Anytime that we apply the apparent lessons of one experience to another one, we tend to assume that the 2 experiences are essentially identical. They never are. Don't look to experts for all your answers. There are no answers, only informed opinions. The fallacy of authority. Chances are, your organization runs on the alpha principle. Ideas do not follow the good thinking in an organization, ideas follow the power. Most organizations work like the groups of apes from which we evolved. The alphas dictate what the group does and thinks. But are alphas better at decision making? Not necessarily. Alphas are just better at getting and keeping power. In most organizations, in fact, alphas are the people who just look and sound like they should have the power, a conclusion suggested by several studies that show that height, not business school performance, is the strongest predictor of an MBA's starting salary. If your smart people don't kill your ideas, chances are the alphas will. If you're an alpha, learn to shut up. Imitate Ben Taylor, the alpha who runs the Execution franchise in Minnesota, often the most successful of America's very successful Execution franchises. When asked to explain his success, Taylor's first response is "I listen." The bumper stickers are right, question authority. Question alphas. The fallacy of common sense. A client once told me that doing a marketing plan is simple. It's just common sense. Unfortunately, common sense is not that common. What seems common, in fact, is people acting contrary to their own experience. Recall again those people who accepted vows in the 1980s. Or worse, people act against their obvious self-interest, a human habit that inspired an entire book, The Marquette of Folly, by historian Barbara Tuchman. As famous examples, Tuchman cites Montezuma surrendering to an Aztec army the size of your high school class, and the Trojans deciding, hey, the Greeks left this huge horse behind. Let's haul it back into our city. My client's faith in common sense was misplaced for another reason. He was right in thinking that most people possess enough common sense to draw a logical conclusion from a premise. But in planning, people do not stumble in reaching conclusions. They are in establishing their premises. Take Burger King's stumble, for example. For years, Burger King operated from these premises: A. People come to us for food, and B. Most people prefer the taste of flame-broiled burgers. From those premises, Burger King executives reached this common-sense conclusion: therefore, we should stress our flame-broiled burgers as the reason to switch to us. Irrefutable logic, but premise A was all wrong. People do not go to fast food restaurants to satisfy a desire for something delicious. They go for something fast, cheap, and palatable that satisfies their hunger. Burger King displayed good common sense, but it cost them millions, because their premise was all wrong. Whenever it does show up, common sense helps in any discipline. My surgeon father said that 90% of orthopedic surgery is common sense. Woody Allen hinted at the same thing when he said that 90% of success is showing up. Basically, marketing planning involves a finite number of broad strategies: create genuine distinction, lead on price, seize an untapped niche and migrate, and some others, from which some common sense will certainly help you choose. The hard and critical part comes next. How do you execute that strategy? How do you fill a niche's needs? How do you create uniqueness? How do you interest and convert prospects? Better yet, how do you interest and convert your own people? How do you succeed? In this realm, the realm of tactics, your options are infinite. This makes common sense virtually irrelevant. At this stage, common sense is a shield rather than a sword. It can protect you, but it cannot fight the battle. Common sense did not inspire the great marketing innovations of this century: the LL Bean Boot, personal computer, overnight delivery, or any other. Leaps of imagination created them. Common sense will only get you so far. For inspiring results, you'll need inspiration. The fallacy of fate. Speaking to the Strategic Planning Committee for Temple Israel in Minneapolis, I began a discussion of this fallacy with a quote from the movie my favorite year: Jews always know two things: suffering, and where to find great Chinese food. I also told them that it was no surprise that The Power of Positive Thinking was written by a white Protestant. I asked them, hey, can you imagine somebody named Goldberg writing a book on positive thinking? While I already knew that Jewish jokes play well to Jewish audiences, my motive was quite serious. There are fatalistic groups, fatalistic people, and fatalistic companies. Some people cannot picture success. Some people are afraid to believe in it because they are terrified of disappointment. And most people will say, we tried something like that. Didn't work. The New York Mets didn't have a prayer in the 1969 World Series. They had been laughed at for years. Their relief pitcher Tug McGraw implored them, you gotta believe. They started believing. Their opponents, the Baltimore Orioles, wish they hadn't. You gotta believe.